Major cities in Texas are contracting with public outreach firms to raise awareness and increase participation in Census 2020. That's part of the role that Nueces Together will be playing in this census effort. The Census Bureau recommends local communities develop complete count committees. So if you hear us talk about the complete count committees, that's will be a huge group of people throughout Corpus Christi and Nueces County that we will be using to help get the word out about the census and to make people comfortable with filling that census form out. So that's going to particularly be important in hard to count populations so that we can figure out different ways to reach them effectively. If you look at, I'm not going to go through this, but if you look at the other handout that we gave you today, it's kind of an activity report of what we've done so far and the number of meetings that we've had with people throughout the city and throughout the county to try to get people involved in the complete count committee. It's done everything from doctors to school teachers to what, Nancy? Who all we? Religious leaders. We're trying to hit everyone who has the ability to get people who are in those hard to count communities to make sure that they fill that census form out, and so that we can get that money from the federal government.
And we have those entities on slides.
Right. The complete count committees will consist of business leaders, faith leaders, elected officials, and representatives. I know we've talked to a lot of you so far, and we still have a few to talk to. The Nueces Together staff's already recruited members for this committee, and Nancy's done a really great job of reaching out to those people and getting those meetings set up. Just real quick, you can kind of see some of the things that we're going to have on the complete count committee. It's a long list. We won't run through each one of them, but you can see some of the people that they've already talked to. In education, a whole long group as well, for the faith community, business community, nonprofit organizations. And then we'll go on to the deal where it talks about hard to count populations. There are several hard to count populations that we have the ability to reach. Some of those are young children. For some reason, when people fill out a census form, they sometimes do not include their younger children. We need to make sure that they do that. College students who live here most of the year can be counted in our census. County jail inmates can be counted. The homeless can be counted. And one of the other hard to count populations is in our rural areas here in Nueces County. And also we have undocumented residents that can be counted as well. That's not a political thing. It is what the Constitution tells us in that is that everybody has to be counted. And truthfully, I will just tell you that in all these hard to count populations, we're going to have to pay the bill anyway. And so we need to make sure that that money is coming in to help us pay those bills. All right, our outreach plan. Nueces Together kind of serves as the hub of the census-related information and outreach in both English and in Spanish. The public engagement campaign will include paid advertising, billboards, radio and TV public service announcements, social media, and outreach to the press. Once the 2020 official count begins, Nueces Together will launch a direct outreach campaign with trained personnel assisting residents in completing the census in both traditional and online methods. It's against the law for U.S. Census workers or anyone else to have access to census data. We just talked about that a minute ago. The field workers that we will have out there assisting people will actually be directing those people that they're talking to the website. The federal government has decided that this year they're trying to get most things online, but we will not have access to the information that they fill out. Only the census people in DC and will have that access. Nueces Together will keep a tally of how many residents they've reached on the phone or in person. I will tell you, one of the things that people have asked about on this is how we're going to find these people if we don't have their names and everything. But what we can do is that Nueces County will be divided into census tracts. And so we'll be able to look at those census tracts to determine how many people have filled out the forms. So for example, if we had census tract 4, and I think, as an aside, I think that last year we had 4 census tracts that no one filled them out, if I remember right. So, but if we see, like, for example, census tract 4, and that there should be, 10,000 people that have filled out that form, and we see that only 5,000 of them have, then we're going to know we need to send field workers into that area to try to find out who hasn't filled them out and get them to go ahead and fill out those forms at that time. Even though we won't have their specific names, we will have the areas in which they live. Okay, timeline. June 19th through September 2019. It's mainly an education effort. We're talking to local leaders, partners, and communities to get them to participate in the Complete Count Committee. We're going to be producing communication materials. We're working with the U.S. Census public information packets. We'll do some social media, web-based outreach tools, and some press kits. In September, next month, we'll be executing more of a public engagement strategy. We'll be going into some of those historically hard-to-count areas. We'll start to develop all of our paid and earned media, our PSAs, the outdoor advertising, and have those ready to go. In 2020, in January, we'll begin recruiting and training direct outreach staff. In March, self-responses can begin, and April the 1st, 2020 is Census Day. Through March and July, it'll be just mainly a call to action for people to respond to the census, and that's when all of our staff, the people that we have to hire, will be going out to engage in direct outreach. That census ends on July the 31st, 2020. That's it. I would just say that I think that for the return on investment, the is a great return on investment, because not only does it affect how much money we receive here, but it also affects the number of businesses that we're able to recruit to this area. And so we're available for any questions.
Anyone? Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, quick question. This goes to our city manager. Have we been able to look at anything with our media capabilities in terms of doing PSAs and that type of thing, in addition to this funding?
Yes, we began to discuss this. I don't have the final plan yet, but Kim Womack and I have had conversations about engaging or using our PSAs and our systems to make the community
Our
aware.
studios?
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
I just think if, like I said, best use of funding, the limited funding that's
Absolutely,
there.
that would be a great help.
Yeah.
If they can make it.
Yeah, we have our studios that are funded by our public utility, PEG, nickel and dollars, so those will be utilized to do some of those PSAs.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I think you plugged this in from budget standpoint.
Yes, yeah, we have $48,000 in the proposed budget for our contribution to Oasis Together.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, if you have any questions, you've all got my phone number, I'm sure.
Give us, kind of keep us updated, and when you need us to do something, let us know.
Okay, thank you very
All right,
much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Annette from our Public Health Department is going to present next.
Thank you. Good morning. Annette Rodriguez, Director of Public Health, and I'm here to talk to you about the Health District's proposed 2020 budget. So a little bit about public health. In the middle, you see the emblem that we adopted from the NACHO, the National Association for City County Health Officials, and that emblem really depicts what we do in public health: prevent, promote, and protect. Those are the three pillars that we stand by and we work towards every day. The Corpus Christi Nueces County Public Health District both were in agreement in July of 1984, actually, to create a cooperative agreement to make the health district the way it stands in the current structure we have today. There are two members of the health district, that is the city of Corpus Christi and the county of Nueces. To the right, you see Dr. Bergen and myself. Dr. Bergen is the local health authority for the health district. Together, we have over 5 decades of experience in public health here at the Health District. Dr. Bergen has been there for 30 years. So his first few years were in tuberculosis. He's still in TB. He's our TB physician, but he's also the local health authority for the last 17 years. And for those years, he's actually has the power to quarantine a facility if he needs to, or even quarantine a city if there's a public health threat. I have been in the Health District for 22 years, 17 years of those I've been the director of the health department. The mission of the health district is to prevent disease, promote healthy lifestyles and to protect the health and quality of the environment for the residents of Nueces County. So you see here some of the myriad of services that the health district offers. We do vaccinations, mostly flu vaccines for the community. We also have our environmental and consumer health. We have our Medicaid diabetes waiver program, 1115 waiver. You've probably heard of it referred to as. We also have our biological lab where we do testing for counter bioterrorism pathogens, and we're constantly promoting wellness initiatives. And I'm going to talk more about wellness initiatives towards the end of the slide.
One question on get your family vaccinated, fight flu and other vaccinations. I mean, this is available to any citizen of the county, right?
Yes, yes.
So, when back-to-school vaccinations or kids need their vaccinations, I mean, they can either go to their doctor or they could come to the Nueces County Corpus Christi Health Department to get their vaccinations. Is correct?
That is correct, but we have two separate types of vaccines. One is considered Texas Vaccine for Children, and so there are certain stipulations. Those are the ones that are the low-cost vaccines, and then we also have private vaccines. So the low cost, there are some stipulations that if you have insurance, you have to use your own private insurance. If you want a private pay, then we can also give you that, and that's a different program that we offer, but we also have those vaccines available.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The health district is organized a little different than the rest of the city, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and you're going to see that I have it here color-coded. And so if you see it red, like at the top, the county commissioner's court and the judge, it's funded by the county. If you see it in blue, like the city council, the mayor, and the city manager, that's funded by the city. So they're either programs or positions that are funded by the city and the county. If you see it filled in blue with the white lettering, that means that it is it's combined. It's funded by both the city and the county. So to the left there, we have the advisory boards that the health district works with. The Citizen Advisory Health Board, we have 5 members that are appointed by the city, 5 members that are appointed by the county, and 1 member that's appointed by both the city and the county. We have our Regional Health Awareness Board. That's also city members and county members, but in addition to that, it also has San Patricio County as a member as well. Our Food Service Advisory Committee is all city. Our County Animal Control Advisory Committee is all county funded and all county members. To the right, you see Dr. Bergen. Underneath that, you see our community health doctor, which is Dr. Ona Frank, and she's paid 60% by the city and 40% by the county. Under that, we have our pharmacist, who's a contract pharmacist, Dr. Opat, and she's also funded by both entities as well. And beneath that, you see our pathologist, Dr. Simonson, who is completely city-funded, and he's contracted to oversee our laboratory. Beneath that, you see our protection division, promotion division, prevention division, our support service division. These are all led by city employees, and the programs are beneath those individuals. The 1115 waiver or the Medicaid is a county-funded position. So since 1984, about the last 35 years, the health district has been governed by the city of Corpus and Nueces County again. The city manager and the county judge are in agreement of exploring the impact of unifying the health district into one governance. So we're happy to hear that one governance will create efficiency in processes and operations at the health district. So we're very excited, so thank you, Peter, for that.
Let me just clarify that we're in agreement of evaluating that, not necessarily that there's one governance structure, but we need to assess the current situation and see what is the best. Is it one governance, or is it making modifications to the existing system that exists today? Yeah, just to clarify.
Thank you. The achievements for 2019 that the Health District has accomplished, the first one is we applied for grant funding and from the Department of State Health Services for $420,000 for a crisis COAG Hurricane Harvey grant, and we did receive that funding to help enhance our emergency capacity. The Health District does employ a grant administrator position that writes the grants for the Health District since we have so many grants there. Achievement 2 is we have, and I know a lot of you were on the council when we talked about automating the vital statistics, and so I'm happy to say that it has all been automated. 687,500 records are now on the computer system. The ladies do not have to go and pick up those heavy binders, and so it's much faster for the customer as well. The third achievement is that we have had TEECs come in, and we've cross-trained our staff in foodborne and waterborne diseases. And so post-hurricane, that's really important because post-hurricane, when the restaurants are all closed, our inspectors actually have to go and touch each restaurant and kind of get them back online. And so with this cross-training, we'll have more individuals at the Health District that can actually go out and get these restaurants up faster for all of us. And the last one is utilizing what we call express testing protocol. In the past, you had to be symptomatic to actually get the testing for sexually transmitted diseases. We now have an express protocol where even if you're asymptomatic and you come in, we can actually test you, and so we can actually treat those individuals as well. And we've found over 200 that have needed treating. So that's a great one as well. To highlight some of the performance measures that the Health District has, the first one is environmental, which encompasses not only complaints but investigations and inspections. In 2018, there were 39,326. This year, 42,000, and we're targeting 43,000 for 2020. Tuberculosis prevention screening. Want to say that so far this year we've only had 6 cases of TB, which is great because Mycobacterium is highly contagious. It is an airborne disease, and that's why public health departments are constantly having to monitor TB. There's a lot of different Mycobacteriums. I could talk about them all day: avian, bovis, chelonia, Kansasii, fortuitum, but the one that we concentrate on is tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And so the screenings that we do them for pre-employment. Some of the school districts require that you have a TB test before you start working in a school district, so we do those screenings. We also screen for schools, for colleges, some student requirements that they are TB tested. We also do screenings in the jail and immigration screenings. In addition to the screenings, if we have an actual person with tuberculosis, anybody that has come in contact with them, we screen them as well. So 27,100 in 2018, 34,000 so far this year, and predicted 35,000 for next year. The vital statistics, the birth and death certificates that we've issued in 2018 were 18,400, 19,000 so far this year, and we're predicting 21,000 because we have the new computer system called TextEver. And TextEver was adopted by the state of Texas, where even if you weren't born in this county, you can still receive your birth certificate here. So that's why we're anticipating the increase for those issued. Health education outreach, we do a lot of outreach, 18,000 contacts for health fairs for presentations that we've done in 2018, 19,719, and 20,000 for 2020. Immunizations, a lot of people think, oh, that's probably 30, 40,000. 20, 30 years ago, we were the main providers for immunizations for children. We are no longer the main providers because we actually are being tasked with making sure that they have a medical home, and it's not the health district. So what we do is we work with the providers. So we have 40 pediatricians here locally that we actually work with. We do oversight compliance to make sure that they have the vaccines that they need for these children, that they store the vaccine correctly. We check on that. We check to see expiration dates for these vaccines, and if they're expiring, we actually have an exchange program where we pick up the vaccine and we take it to another pediatrician's office that has more utilization of that vaccine, so that way we don't have any waste in the vaccine. 8,000 in 2018, 8,300 in 2019, and 9,000 predicted for 2020. Again, we have a myriad of public health services. Our core mission elements are, number one is enforce health and safety codes. Mostly our environmental inspectors help us with that. There are 28 FTEs there. Provide and manage medical clinics. There's 33.5 FTEs there. These are our community health clinics, our immunization, TB, STD, HIV, women's health, WIC clinics. We also have disease prevention. We have 18 FTEs there. And this is our disease intervention specialists that we have, our emergency preparedness people, our strategic national stockpile staff. We're a liaison for the Medical Reserve Corps. We also do flu surveillance throughout the community, and we do infectious disease control as well. And we do have our laboratory that I've discussed. And then conduct health education. We have 35.47 FTEs there. These individuals do outreach, develop the PSA, give out public information, health education, teach smoking cessation classes, diabetes education classes as well. We have 3 clinics, one in Ropstown at the Calderon building. We also have our Flower Bluff clinic, and we have the main Horn Road clinic. The proposed budget for the health district is $11 million. $3.8 million comes from the city general fund. 3.1 comes from the city grants and what we call, it used to be called the MEND program. It's our Medicaid 1115 waiver program that we no longer run. We stopped running that in 2015 and 16 because we didn't have enough funding to continue at the capacity that we needed to continue according to the deliverables. And so, but we have $1.1 million that we've included in there, and we'd like to talk about it a little bit at the end about some ideas that we have for those funds. So as you can see on the pie, 63% are the lion's share of what we receive at the health districts comes from the city. So the other part is 37% that comes from Nueces County, and that includes the county general fund at $1.5 million and the county grants at $2.6 million, which also includes the waiver in there. The positions at the bottom are 70.97 for the city of Corpus Christi and 44 for Nueces County, for a total of 114.97 positions at the health district. To break the pie down a little bit more is the 3.8, the city general fund. On the outside of the ring, you're going to see that's the revenues. The inside is the services that the health district provides. The outside of the ring, we have administration, right around $500,000 that we bring in. And that's money that we get from the county to reimburse at the 40% for my salary, the assistant director salary, 50% for Dr. Bergen's, the 40% we talked about for the other physicians. They also pay rent at $45,000, and then they help with IT support at 34%, facility support at 46%, and they pay a portion of a purchaser at 40%. So the outside ring equates to $1.7 million, and then the general resources picks up the rest at $2 million. The inside, the services are the tuberculosis, the vital statistics, environmental, our sexually transmitted disease clinic, our immunization, our community health clinic, and our laboratory. For the city grants and the Medicaid or the program funds, that's $3.1 million. This pie, whatever you see on the outside of the ring, you're also going to see on the inside because it's structurally balanced. These are grants that we balance, so what we receive is what we spend. So you see the regional local service grant, the immunization grant at $300,000, the tuberculosis grant, the women, infant, and children grant at $868,000, the laboratory response network, the epidemiology grant that provides us with an epidemiologist, and the 1115 waiver, the Medicaid grant at $1.2 million. For the county, I put the pie all together, so it's one big pie. I won't split it into pieces any more than this. So you have the county general fund and the grants and the Medicaid all together, and it equates to $4.1 million that we receive from the county. So, and again, it's structurally balanced, so the outside of the rings do match up with the inside. I'd like to talk to you briefly about enhancement number 1, which is very exciting for us. This is $200,000. It's a wellness initiative to combat obesity. So we started thinking about a name for how we would move this initiative, and one of our staff members came up with Healthy Corpus. Corpus, we all know the Latin for corp is body, so healthy body. So we thought it was a great name to push forward. We're still playing around with the little slogan. As you see on the right, we see somebody running fast there. Everybody here knows obesity is a global epidemic. This isn't something that's just germane to us here in Nueces County, but we'd like to do something about it. So this is a multi-phase approach that we have here, and what we want to do is first kind of start out grassroots, and let's identify the disease prevalence in Corpus Christi. We have epidemiological teams that we would like to send out to the different zip codes and actually find out how bad is the problem. So how much do we have in overweight and obese populations, and where are they, so we can target more of our resources to those areas. So the first year we'd conduct public awareness and educational campaign to increase the perception that overweight and obesity are significant public health risk. We'd also like to teach the health risk and diseases associated with being overweight or obese, and we'd also want individuals to understand the economic impact associated with being overweight or obese and obese-related diseases. The multi-phase approach would, in year 2, we'd be working very closely with the medical providers to actually increase early recognition of the problem. A lot of times I think you go into the doctor's office and they want to really, take care of that knee problem you're having, but I think we know the root of a lot of the problems are going to be from obesity or overweight, and so we'd like to work closely with the providers to see if we can also take care of and decrease some of that weight for individuals, if we could teach them how to move in that right direction. In year 3, we're talking about improving those healthy eating habits and instilling lifelong physical activity into their life. And in year 4, we're really looking at evaluating all the data. We're looking at bringing in some interns to help us with gathering the data, inputting the data, and actually continue to make changes as needed to improve health outcomes. The final enhancement that we have at the Health District is $1.1 million. And this is money that we have in the coffers that we've already earned with Medicaid funds. And the intention of those funds is to improve health in our community. And so the concept is a downtown business plan development, and it would be an indoor-outdoor fitness facility. So we thought, what better way to utilize these funds than to be, working out and looking at the bay at the same time. And so we thought if we could get a third party, get the private sector involved and leverage some additional funds, that would enhance the monies that we have, and it would make for a bigger, better facility. There's prime real estate downtown that somebody could scoop up and build this, and we would have people working out and looking at our beautiful bay. So that is enhancement number 2. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn it over to Laura Garcia, who will discuss the library.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. Laura Garcia, Library Director. The mission of the library is to improve literacy, enhance knowledge, and to create a sense of community by making information easily accessible to the public. One of our early literacy initiatives that we introduced in 2017 is the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. Studies show that children between the ages of 0 and 5 that are read to on a regular basis enter kindergarten with better cognitive and language skills than those who are seldom read to. Currently, we have 1,200 children enrolled in this program, and the young lady here in this image that perhaps you can see that she has had 500 books already read to her. Our library system consists of 6 locations, and we have 1 managing librarian at each of those locations overseeing the daily operations. From these images, you can see that we provide services to individuals of all ages. In 2018, we provided over 2,000 events. We had an attendance of over 60,000. We had 753,000 items checked out, and our 131 public PCs had over 143,000 logins. Our achievements. This I'm really excited about. We have been able to acquire $255,000 in private funding to implement our RFID project. This project is estimated to cost about $300,000, and $45,000 would come from the library budget. RFID is designed to improve customer service. We will be bringing this to council within the next few months, this item to council within the next few months. Item number 2 is that we have been able to acquire $214,000 in CDBG grants to improve our broadband capability at the Laura Tama and and McDonald Library. The improvements to broadband at McDonald Library are really important because we are transitioning that location to a technology learning center. Number 3 achievement is really one that I'm really excited about. We have received $110,000 from Ed Rochelle funds to implement a Success for Life initiative. This is a three-phase initiative. The first initiative that we've done is the Career Online High School program. We are one of 6 public library systems in the state of Texas that are implementing this program. We currently have 17 students enrolled in the program, and we have funding for 25. When the students finish the program, they will receive an accredited high school diploma. One of those individuals is a city employee, and so we're really excited and hope to have our first graduates by the end of the year. The second phase is to improve the Literacy Council lab at the McDonald Library, and the third phase will be to implement a high-set testing center at McDonald Library. Performances. One of the things that I want to point out to you here is the library visitors, because the number appears to be dropping. One of the issues that we're having is that our gates that record our visitor counts are outdated and are frequently malfunctioning. So one of the things that we will be implementing with the RFID project is new gates. The other number that I'd like to point out here is that our 131 public computers are estimated to get 170,000 logins this year. Our services, we have 4 key services, which are lending materials, promoting literacy, administering enjoyable educational and literary programs, and providing digital inclusion technology. Our proposed budget is 4.4. In 2019, we have 56.3 FTEs, and the proposed increase will be to 51.63. In the general fund, you see that we get 4.3 from the general fund with 2% from fees and fines. Our enhancement is to add a library assistant position at a cost of $28,763 to increase weekly operating hours from 43 to 56 at the Janet F. Hart Library in Flower Bluff. And I now turn it over to Jermel Stevenson with Parks and Recreation.
Good morning, Jermel Stevenson, Parks and Recreation Director. I'll be handling the budget proposal for Parks and Recreation. So, to begin with, this is our mission statement, which is to manage the park system and to offer recreation, social, and cultural activities to our residents. Here. Just a few facts about the park system. We maintain 10 miles of beaches. We, on average, do 139 water rescues. Preventables are right at 1,600, just a little over 1,600, and total contacts is just past 12,000. Total contacts, that includes, hey, I had a jellyfish sting. You look like you need help. Those sorts of contacts. We tracked all of those sort of things. We also are an accredited parks agency. We are one of 15 accredited agencies in the state and one of 169 in the country. This is our organization here. This is how we get it done. Here's our foremost team here with program services, as well as beach operations, and also our park operations as well. In addition to that, we interact often with about 13 commissions and committees, from our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee all the way to our Watershore and Beach Advisory Committee. We had some significant achievements during the past fiscal year, during this fiscal year. The West Gooth Pool and park improvements, those were completed from the 2012 bond. We also, not long ago, had the phase 2 and 3 finalized for the Play for All playground at Salinas Park. We installed ADA mobility mats out at the Packery Channel, as well as showers at Beach Access 3A. And we also completed the tennis management contracts, and those were awarded. So these are some of the performance measures that we go by in the department, from annual total acres of parkland that is mowed to the number of beach permits that we sell, the number of recreation programs that we have participants, whether they are youth or our adults or our seniors. We track all of those. We also track the annual number of drop-in visits as well, because we need to keep track of that number so we keep up with the resources needed. So by way of services, these are our key services. We have our park operations that includes our stormwater. We care for the ditches there and make sure that those are mowed and maintained, as well as our 189 parks. We also have our beach operations that's a key service for us, as well as I've mentioned already, our community recreation programs and services, from our leagues to dance classes to Zumba, you name it, we're offering that. So here's our proposed budget, right at $33.8 million. You will see that we have a diversity of funding to to operate the department, from our general fund to our special revenues fund, enterprise funds, and grants funding. There's a change this year with the proposal of 1.3 in our general fund, and our special revenues fund has a change of 2.7 million, and our enterprise fund just at 100,000, and also our well, there's no changes in our grant funds, excuse me, but our full-time equivalencies, our FTEs, are at a variance of just over 15. So to break that down just a little bit more, here our general fund, it alone is at just over 20 million, and you can see that on the inside there, those are our expenditures from our beach operations and our park operations and those key services again, including our recreation operations. And how we get there is by way of additional funding through our hot funds, and then getting our staff out there to sell our beach parking permits, as well as just the sales that we receive from other vendors too. So these are this is how the general fund is also fed into.
Can I ask you just one question? I don't see reflected here, but it may go to the general fund, and then that's counted as general fund money. Doesn't the city also receive some money from the GLO on the linear feet beach that we clean out of some type of fund, in addition to what our parking fees are?
You know, Mayor,
Does that
I would
come
have
to
to
the general
check.
fund, or is that a separate item deals directly? with
Eddie,
parking?
can you come up and address that real quick? Yeah, let Eddie just get
From that fund. It's in the general fund. They get about 80,000, 70,
I believe
80,000 from the general land office.
Okay, but that goes into our general fund, and then that's part of your general fund and not a broken out identified
Yes, sir.
source?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 62,000?
Going down.
Becky, if you maybe use a podium. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you.
We have our enterprise funds at $3.8 million. That is comprised of our golf course capital and maintenance, and as well as our stormwater mowing. We receive golf funds by way of revenue as well to feed into the golf course capital and maintenance as an example of our usage in this fund. So we have also our special revenue funds, which is right at $7.5 million, and this is comprised of another range of diverse funding mechanisms there. You see our community enrichment expenditures, our cultural facilities, our beach operations, and also our hot funding. Well, that feeds into our transfer of to general fund. So we have a variety of grants funding as well to help us run a number of our key services, including what we provide to our seniors and our youth during during our summer programs. So for example, we receive funding from Texas, the Texas Department of Agriculture, Department of Family and Protective Services, as well as the Corporation for National and Community Services. And again, this helps our elderly and nutrition program, our senior companion program, and our retired senior volunteer program. So we get into our enhancements here. We're very excited about these. For example, our first one here is the mowing cycles. We want to reduce our mowing cycles in many of our park properties from having a 13-day wait to a 14-day maximum. Then we have our park maintenance and repairs. We're asking, we're proposing 4 FTEs for our construction and irrigation team for inspections and repairs to park amenities and irrigation systems. We do have some challenges with our irrigation. They're constantly meeting some failure. We typically need to reach out and bring in contractual staff, which creates a wait time for us, and we believe that this will help us immensely in resolving that. We want to get into Enhancement 3 with our aquatics. We're proposing an aquatics maintenance mechanic at 1 FTE, and this is going to help us increase our preventative maintenance program at our pools and water features throughout the city. This is a measure of trying to get ahead of it a bit. We have aging facilities, and we need an additional person to come on board and help us get ahead of what our maintenance costs are. We also are eliminating the emission fees for all of our pools beginning this upcoming fiscal year. And so we look forward to opening up the doors and really increasing our numbers that way and introducing an even greater audience to other programs and services that we offer. So our Enhancement 4 deals with updating our systems parks master plan, as well as creating some business plans for Heritage Park, and as well as Bill Witt. Our Enhancement 5 deals with our Gulf Beach. The park enforcement officer is the proposal. This is adding an additional officer to patrol the 7.9 miles of Gulf Beach and increasing our beach patrol hours and shifts. So Enhancement 6 here is our Gulf Beach lead lifeguard and 4 summer lifeguard positions. There is a need to have a lead lifeguard out at the beach that will help us with our training, that will help us with organizing the staff out there, as well as the 4 summer lifeguard positions. We believe that that will also help with coverage out at the public beaches at the Gulf Beach.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
there was some communication between the city and the county about
Yes.
additional lifeguards. Did we ever come up with anything that's going to be in this beach?
Yes, sir, we have. We've done something temporarily through Labor Day, where
Right.
we will be doing coverage for some of the county beaches as well. We currently are also working out an agreement for further coverage during the spring of next year and the summer. Those aren't finalized yet, but I don't think we'll have any issues there.
Okay.
Okay. So Maggie Beach is another focal area. We want to enhance what we are doing in terms of our maintenance levels out at Maggie Beach. In addition to that, we want to improve our lifeguard stands as an example. We know that this is a highly utilized beach every weekend, every day really, and so we want to put some additional maintenance efforts over at that operation. The same with our North Beach maintenance as well. We're asking for additional staff there to help with our beach sanitation services, installation of additional trash cans and trash removal, amenity repairs, and graffiti removal. Bay Beach Park Enforcement Compliance Officer is our number 9 enhancement. This is to patrol areas from Maggie Beach and Water's Edge to Hance Suter Park. And our enhancement 10 here is creating a business plan and utilization for Heritage Park and all the homes that are there. There's some feasibility that needs to be looked at there. We want to look at how we can better utilize those facilities, or what our shorter long-range plans need to be on that. Enhancement 11 deals with our community enrichment funds. We intend to begin at least a phase 1 conversation, or phase 1 development of our Oso Creek hike and bike trail, additional trees at many of our park locations that will
This week's feature is local hike and bike trails. The Shannon Hike and Bike Trail is over a mile long, running from Yorktown and Saratoga Boulevard. The trail is made of gravel and concrete and passes by many parks along the way. You can take a seat at one of the rest areas and enjoy the scenery. Another trail to check out is the Bear Creek Hike and Bike Trail. It goes through schools and neighborhoods between Bill Witt and Oso Creek Park. The 1.5-mile path is made of decomposed granite and concrete. Some other trail options can be found at the Oso Bay Wetlands Preserve. There's nearly 2 miles of nature trails with viewing spots along the route. These trails are perfect for residents of all ages, so get out there and enjoy the outdoors. For more information, visit us at www.cctexas.com.
Providing water is just one of the many responsibilities that the city of Corpus Christi takes on for the folks who call this warm, sunny South Texas city home. And as residents know, that comforting sun they appreciate while enjoying a day at the beach can also bring on sweltering heat that leads to dreaded drought conditions. And with drought conditions come water restrictions.
In 2011 to 2013, this area of South Texas was highly influenced by a drought.
That's why council members this summer decided to move forward with the City of Corpus Christi desalination project.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
A decision that could bring a drought-proof water supply to residents and the surrounding community, and because we're surrounded by the ocean, it just makes sense.
We will study or review site location permitting of a potential seawater desalination plant.
The city is looking to build a plant that can produce 11 million gallons per day to about 22 million gallons per day. A desalination plant removes the minerals like salt and sand from water.
To drive down the bayfront and you see, I think there's something called Healthy Mom or something, and you see women out there that are exercising with they're exercising with the strollers, so that way they can involve their children, and they're out there on those concrete pads. So I'd like to see us utilize those funds to work with those different organizations, or see if we can capitalize on those people that are utilizing it and say, how can we improve it, rather than have someone come and design a facility that somebody already does. I used to be a part of on the board of the YMCA, which, I learned to swim there back in the 70s, I'll just say. And, they're having difficulties. And I think if we possibly can leverage our dollars to work with them, that might be an opportunity. I don't know that we can or we can't, but I think that's another opportunity, because it's right there, right on the bluff. It's always been a great facility, and I know that they're having a hard time. And I think with the downtown area, you have a whole group of individuals that head to gyms on the south side.
Right.
Whether it be the athletic club, whether it be goals, whether it be, and I'm guilty of that too. And I'd love to have a facility to be able to be here that's extensive, that way I could do it during the day and then just be here because I work downtown. So I would suggest that we look at that, to look at other partners where we can make that $1 million go a long way. And if we have an outdoor facility, then obviously it's probably Parks that's going to manage it, because it's going to be incorporated to a park. So just some things there, I think, to throw out. I think it worries me a lot of times when we say we have this money, and then all of a sudden we're not paying attention to, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and we could integrate that with another to leverage our funds.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, it is conceptual at this point, but we would put out a request for proposals, and so, it would be determined also by who actually fills out those proposals and qualifies to meet those requirements. But we really this isn't something that we wanted to take on. We don't have that capacity at the health district to, maintain a facility, or even,
exactly,
for personnel. So yes, I'm in a complete agreement with you on that. So appreciate again those comments.
And then also, diabetes prevention. My business is employee benefits, and we always hear about the health fairs where, we're doing diabetes testing and somebody's blood sugar is just way off the charts. You hear the anecdotal information about, this person was about to go into a seizure and we found a doctor for him right away. And, once again, if we partner with groups like the Society of Human Resource Managers, which I believe our staff is a member of, and we work with those employers and those large employers to market to them. Typically in a health plan, prevention is no charge. It's just the time to go and have that individual. Here, for example, as a city, I know we have our facility upstairs, and it's a great program. But of all our employees, typically it's usually, the ones that are here that utilize it. So if there's some type of mobile clinics or something of that nature, because diabetes, I think at one time I used it as a stat that if you went from San Antonio south, diabetes we would be ranked last as far as the number of diabetics in South Texas if we were included as our own state. So I know it's important to you, but I think the thing that's been missing in the public sector is working with the private sector and, you know, we have, you know, I mean, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but I think that's what's been missing. And once again, it's a further extension of the dollars that you use where you have partnerships with the private sector.
Absolutely.
Because you do great work. I mean, you know, I know you're marketing with the schools with regard to and I think it's great that you're working with the doctors right now. So that way they're taking that over, and it's an expense that we don't have to bear, and we've got somebody else that's using it. So yeah, those are just my comments. I kudos to the work that you do, because, you know, like the mayor said, we're providing that service. We just need to market it out.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that.
Mr. Hernandez?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had some more, but.
Oh, I thought you'd finished. I'm sorry.
No, I'm finished with her, so, but.
Oh, okay. Well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead with, if you had some other questions.
I'm sorry. Libraries. So, you know, I'll tell you two stories. One of them, and I'm going to date myself again, is that, you know, my parents used to work downtown, and so when I went to school at the Cathedral. So when school let out, I kind of camped out at the La Retama Library, you know. And, you know, I was able to really, it did so much for me to really just to read. Of course, back then we didn't have video games, you know.
Yes.
So I know you're doing a wonderful job at the McDonald Library. Once again, I think, you know, and that's just right outside my district, right across the street. And, but I know that neighborhood needs those programs so much. So once again, you know, marketing with the schools, I know that the Garcia Library in conjunction with CAFE is amazing. And, you know, I think I don't know, do we have a program like that where we market to like Martin Middle School or the other elementary schools, particularly in that area?
Well, I know that since the McDonald Library they work very closely with Martin Middle School, and I think it's Crockett Elementary that's there. So all those that are right there, and of course Moody's down the street. So they do outreach to those facilities.
Okay. I just think that now, you know, in our district, particularly in the older communities, you know, we do have the students sometimes get neglected, and we just, once again, we need to integrate with the school so that way we can get those, and once again get a more value for our buck.
Yes, sir.
And parks, man, I got a lot of questions or a lot of comments. Couple things, and I don't usually like to get into projects, but this one's I've been bugged for I don't know how long. When are we gonna get some splash pads?
Splash pads you'll see in a very short time. This upcoming fiscal year is when you'll see splash pads.
That's not real short. Or October.
Well,
so you're telling me October 1?
Well, we have to install them. Our plan is to have them functioning by Memorial Day of next year.
Memorial Day next year?
That's right. But you all will see very soon in the next few weeks or so information and presentations on that.
When's the project going to be let?
I'm sorry?
When's the project going to be let? In other words, somebody's going to have to build them, so when's the project going to be let? In other words, you know, you have to start procurement, and you have to have a procurement.
Yes, you'll get those within the next few weeks. You'll see that information.
That's what I was going to say. We've been going through a process of analytics to determine whether to do a flow through, whether to do a circulation, and even whether to do a repurposing, taking that water and then using it to irrigate. We've been going through that process. We've finalized that process. Now we're going to look to go out on the RFQ and should get that to you pretty quickly.
Okay, yeah, and I just want to reiterate, since I've been on the council, the 8 months I've been hearing, when are we going to get splash pads?
We are still on schedule to have them there for next season.
Okay, and we just need a community, and I'm sure that the Parks and Rec Committee, they're obviously, they're well, they're okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure. Okay. You know, this year with the beaches, I'm glad that we're increasing the personnel that are out there. You had an issue here that you said that there was, you explained one of them. Here we go. Preventables. What's preventables?
Preventables typically is us going and either we're seeing it near drowning, or people will call us and we can get there.
And how many, I mean, this was a rough year for us. How many fatalities did we have this year?
Oh, let me make certain of this. We have had 4 drownings.
Okay. So I just want to once again reiterate that, and I know there were probably 3 that weren't local and 1 was local. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I don't know, Peter, and I don't know what we find out what other communities are doing. It's just that obviously when you don't have locals and they get you know, they want to go out and enjoy the beach, and they get bold and they just don't know. And so I don't know what it is that we do. We've got to figure out something, because obviously we just need to be quite focused on that. And you know, it just seems like this year I've heard about it more. I don't know that it's just come out.
You're hearing about it more. 4 is average.
Yeah, 4 is average. Okay.
But that's for all the beach, city beach.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, your question addresses the reason that the city and the county are having some conversations with lifeguards is that I think if you look, those were in the Bob Hall area, and I think the negotiation is for the city to provide additional coverage down there, or really take over, so you've got coverage of the entire beach.
That's right.
And the county's willing to work with us on that, from what I understand.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, several of the drownings occurred not in the city's watch area, so they were county or other entities' beaches. So one of the things that we're going to look at again and get a recommendation to this council and the county is having the city manage the beach, the entire length of the beach. Today it's city, and then there's a section of county, then it goes back to city, and so on. And this is 0 coverage. So at Lake Bob Hall, there was no coverage until recently. We put one of our lifeguards there under an agreement from the county who's paying us for that lifeguard. But we need to look at the whole beaches from beginning to end and consolidate that. And our recommendation is to have the city do it, and the county would reimburse us, not only for lifeguarding, but also for beach cleanliness. There's a noticeable difference when you're driving down the beach of how clean the cities are, and then when you run into non-city territory, they're not as clean. And so we want to make that entire stretch of the Gulf Beach look the same and have the same coverage. So we're working on an interlocal agreement between the city and Nueces County.
And that's fantastic. I love hearing that. And I, you know, I've been quiet to all the budget meetings. Obviously, parks is a big deal for me, and I just wanted to make it clear that you know exactly how I feel about it. So great work. Keep that up. I know you going back again. You know, I went to Moody High School. And there were a lot of our players that went to that HEB Tennis Center back then. And, you know, obviously a more inner city area. And I think, you know, tennis is typically considered a sport for the affluent. And, you know, it's still in an older side of the community. And I'd really like for us to have more interaction with the association that they have out there. I'd like to see that, because once again, that's an organization that is committed. You have those individuals, they take students off to different colleges. There's tennis scholarships. A buddy of mine that went off and I got to go to a major university as a result of playing tennis at Moody High School, where he probably wouldn't have had that opportunity to do this. Of course, this was back in the 80s, but I haven't felt that there's been and once again, enough interaction with those organizations that have been doing it for years, that know how to do it, that we're able to get things done. I know they had a summer program, and it seems like they were falling apart at the seams. And I know that they have a plan, the association, to try and expand on that, because there's a ton of kids from that neighborhood. Once again, inner city kids, we want to keep them out of trouble. And, you know, tennis is a great way from them to move away from playing stickball, or, you know, where that, once again, it's an opportunity for a child to see a different community or a different network than what they're used to seeing when they're growing up in an older neighborhood. So I'd like to see more interaction with that. I think that's real important. I think sometimes also that there's a disconnect with facilities management. You know, Becky, I was bugging about a light pole for months. And I think there's times like that we need to really focus and say, you know what, if it's a week that it hasn't been fixed, it's too long. If it's 2 weeks that it hasn't been fixed, it's too long. We have to have some where, and I love the downtown area. I think, you know, the Water's Edge Park, once again, I mean, I don't say it's a home run, it's a grand slam, because it's got people out there, people out on the beach, you know, the food trucks that we have now, you know, you've heard how many times, they do this in San Antonio or they do this in this town. Why can't we do it here? Well, now we're doing it here, but we can't let bureaucracy get in the way and common sense get in the way. I mean, or exercise common sense and let bureaucracy get in the way of getting things done. And so I think that there's times that we need to be more cognizant that those individuals are customers for our community. And we, just like any other private sector business, we need to have it out there where it's the best experience that they could have. You know, that those basketball parks, you know, making sure that they look strong. The other day, I think somebody told me they wanted to expand more basketball courts. When I remember several years ago, we had a hard time putting a basketball court out there to begin with, and now there's so much utilization. So I think just having that different attitude of being customer service driven from that perspective. And tell me, how are like the Bay Jammin' series, and how are those things, I didn't see that in the budget here. How are those type of events, how do we handle those?
Those are by way of funding. Those are handled by way of funding through our, let me be certain of this, through our general fund.
Okay. Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem. I guess I'm next on the list. First off, I want to thank you for your presentations. All you do is a great job. I don't have any questions for the library group. I'm just going to say, Laura, I think that you and the library board do a great job with the resources you do have. I've been in all your facilities. I see the programs you have going on, and I'm real proud of our library system. Of course, with more funding, we could do a lot more, but you know, what we have is what we have, and you do a great job of stretching the dollars. So thank you, and utilizing some of the grant dollars to do more. On the health side, the only question that I've got, and the only concern I've got, and I agree with related to some of the conceptual ideas of trying to create more activity for those of us that might be a little bit obese, or maybe even more obese than we need to be. But I'm real concerned about the amount of dollars and resources that go into mental health. As a community, a lot of the challenges that we have are related, and everybody talks about the homeless issue that we have in Corpus Christi, and a lot of the folks that are wandering around there homeless, I mean, it's a mental health issue. I know that we've got another entity, another organization that works on mental health, but I really think that the board needs to look and see if there's anything that we're missing that we might be able to do in terms of mental health. In terms of all the efforts we're trying to do in homelessness, it's not going to be enough if we can't, if we can't address mental health and figure out how we help more of those folks, a larger percentage of those folks than we're currently doing. If they're not getting the medicines or the medications that they need, then they go out and self-medicate using drugs and alcohol, and then they're winding themselves, interfering with some of the business activity of our local merchants, winding up in basically a circle through our municipal court system, municipal detention center, and just causing us general problems all the way around. So I just think that 2% of the entire budget going to mental health, I don't think is enough for our area. We need to do more. And so if there's anything you can do on that side, I know the 1115 waiver helps with the obesity and diabetes, and so that I think there's funds going there that are helping us on that front. But I just think that we need to do more on the mental health side. Okay, but great job overall. Great job. Thank you. Parks and Rec. A couple of questions. And this year's budget is hugely enhanced by the community enrichment dollars that we're using, but going forward, at some point, we'll deplete the community enrichment dollars that we've got that aren't going to allow us to sustain the investment that we need to make in our current park system. So at some point, you guys, I think I've seen some advertisements related to making sure that those that want to participate in vending and at some of the facilities or some of the events, I think that's a great step in the right direction. We can get some additional revenue from that side. Maybe again, if we're able to develop our community more in terms of fixing some of the stuff that we have in development services, then that'll feed into and actually build more into the Community Enrichment Fund. Yeah. But I think, this is a great step in the right direction. We're able to execute the things you have in here. I think that, people complain about the dollars that we spend in parks, and it's really the complaint is of what we don't get or the product that we actually deliver. So at the end of the day, if we're able to deliver what we've got in this budget, I think the public's going to be pleased. And so I think that they'll be willing to consider more funding or trying to create more funding streams so that we can spend more in Parks and Rec. So again, thank you very much for the efforts, and I'm looking for great things to happen this year on the Parks and Rec side. Okay.
Thank you.
Aquatics, I'm a real fan in basically maintaining the facilities you do have.
Yes.
It's terrible if you go out there and invest dollars in a water feature and then you don't maintain it, and then you've got to spend all these additional dollars to come back and make it operational again. So maintaining what you do invest in, whether it be, again, I've talked about it in some of the parks downtown, pet waste station, not putting in bags in there so that people actually pick up after their pet's mess is it's an investment made in not properly utilized because we're not putting the right effort in making sure that the public gets the right utilization. So again, great presentation. Thank you so much. Okay.
Mr. Roy?
Yes, I want to thank everyone for their presentation. My first question I have is really just something I observe on public health. I noticed that, there's outreach, diabetes patient navigators, but I didn't see much on nutrition. And I just wondered, maybe it's just not here in the slide, but I just wanted to comment. I think nutrition goes hand in hand with a lot of the other things we're talking about, obesity, the lack of the willingness not to work out or anything of that nature. How do you feel in terms of nutrition, or what are you doing as far as being able to integrate nutrition or education into your program?
And you're absolutely correct. Nutrition is a part of all of these programs. So the diabetes educators, that's 80% of what they're teaching is nutrition. We're also looking at demonstrations that we do. We do them in WIC as well, food demonstrations. And I think everybody knows what the trick is, kind of like you said. They know if you eat less calories and you move around more, you could lose weight. But actually being able to do it, so we try to incorporate like culturally sensitive, eating habits and trying to make smaller portions, more of the mind frame. And so it is very important because you can exercise all day long, but if you don't change your eating habits, not a lot of movement is going to happen. And so I appreciate those comments, and yes, we definitely incorporate nutritional habits, healthy eating habits into different programs that we give. And our navigators, that's what they actually do as well for the diabetes population. So they're talking to these individuals, or if they, we have a system where we have some individuals where if you do their, you give them blood sugar cartridges, and you give them the things that they need and the scales, and if they're having a bad day, we can actually tell because it's tied together, and we can call them up and, not to kind of, pick on anybody, but just to see if they needed anything. Was there anything that happened this weekend that maybe was stressful, and we're trying to figure out what were their eating habits over the weekend. Was it some type of big barbecue party where it had a lot of sweets, and just to kind of help them navigate through that. But really, the big push has been smaller portions.
I think it'd just be interesting if you do have that ability to do that public-private venture, maybe down at the water area that you showed in your presentation, to carve out a little area there, maybe so that somebody could, for cooking classes or something like that, where people could learn to cook healthier. Anyway, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
My next question or area really is, Laura, for libraries. A few weeks ago, we heard public comment that talked about the hours of operation for our libraries and the number of days, or the lack of the number of days, that our libraries are open. And I wondered, just from a director's standpoint, how do you feel about, do you think that we need to have longer hours?
Well, can you hear me? Okay. Well, one of the things is that we did receive a lot of cuts, like in the 2011 budget cycles. And at the main library, we have been closed on Mondays since then. We used to be open 70 hours a week. We were reduced to 40 hours. And we came back a few years ago back to 43. So that is one of the complaints is at the main library, that we don't have sufficient hours at that location. Most of our other locations, we have evening hours, either till 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And basically, we have like 55 hours at most of the other locations.
And I say that because, I think that there is an issue in terms of the number of children, or whatever age, all the way up through high school, that are encouraged to read or made to read, like a lot of us were when we were younger. And I think it's starting to show in the workforce. I think it's starting to show in several sectors where people just don't, that's a skill set that I think we're losing as many people start watching TV and streaming things. But the other thing is I think it also needs to be continued to look at as a safe haven, in terms of sometimes it's the only place where a kid can have access to a computer to be able to do their work, and I think we need to look at those things. So I know that you expanded an FT, you had one additional employee that you expanded this year, right?
Yes, that would be at the Hart Library in Flower Bluff. We had to reduce those hours also due to cuts about 2 fiscal years back, and so this will be able to reinstate those hours.
Okay. I just think, again, it's important to just remember that in a lot of cases, unfortunately, the library is the last effort before, in terms of resources for a lot of these kids, where they can go and have the ability to read and do the things they need to do.
And to your point, also, that's why about 3 years now, we started developing programs for teens. We've always been very good at having programs for the younger children, up to age 12, and then very good about having programs for adults. But for many years, we did not have any teen services at all. But that's one of the reasons we've instituted teen services at each of our locations. Another thing is that we do focus on a lot of our programs reaching the young adults. And also, to your point about nutrition, the library does offer many classes related to nutrition. We have the food bank. We partner with them, and they come and do cooking demonstrations for adults as well as for children. So we do also take into consideration what we need in our community.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Councilman, if I could add to what Laura was saying, based on our community input at all 5 districts, there was a consistent request for more library hours and services. We're going to recommend today, Eddie will show you an additional $70,000 for library in the budget, and we'll show you how we're going to recommend funding it. It would include a senior library assistant and a library assistant at the Laura Palmer Library in particular. So it may not necessarily help with hours, but it'll help with service at the libraries. These are some of the areas that were cut, as Laura said, a couple of years ago. So we're recommending that in part because of your comments, but also the community input that we received from our work sessions in the community. At each of the districts, there was many comments made on better library services. So,
thank you. I have one question for Parks. I know in North Beach that we procured a ATV, isn't that right? And there was a full-time individual that was supposed to basically man that area. And then right now it's been vacant.
It's been vacant, yes.
So I think in reading you were adding 2 additional FTEs for maintenance in that area. That particular position, were they related to code enforcement or anything? Did they have even though it's vacant, what power do they have in terms of when they do police the area?
It's not code enforcement.
It wasn't. It was just a.
It's more of safety. It's more of informing. It's more of rules, regulations. Quick call to our PD, being our eyes and ears out on the beach.
So if like somebody had a barbecue pit and they were grilling right in the middle of of the walkway there, they would just tell them, you know what, you can't do that. You got to move it to the side.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any success on trying to hire somebody? I know that the season's pretty much over, but
we have not filled that.
Okay. And there was one other thing. I just wanted to say thank you again. I think that the free swimming is a really good program that I think we're going to get some really good use out of that, I believe, and I think that may go hand in hand, hopefully, with cutting down the number of people that drown. That's always a concern of mine. My daughter, my youngest, is 10. She brings all of her friends, and she says, come on, I'm going to bring 4 or 5 friends to the beach or to a pool or something like that. And my first question is, okay, do you know how to swim? Do you really know how to swim? Oh yeah, I'm a great swimmer. And then you watch the kid get in the pool and it's like, okay, not a great swimmer. And that's a liability and just something as a parent that I'm always a little nervous at. You know, they go out on the lake and they jump into the water and you're thinking, okay, what's your definition of a really good swimmer?
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Good presentation.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. I guess we can start off with public health. I noticed in your budget you have $64,000 that's new to the budget specifically for mental health. Is that specifically for somebody going to be on staff? I mean, is it contracted out? What exactly is that?
Actually, that money isn't for public health. That actually goes to mental health and intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, it is related to public health, but Keith, you want to, it's an additional payment to
the mental health and intellectual disabilities group.
Yeah, it went from 54 to 64. It may have been in a different area. That's probably why it shows up as new, but it's
moving from somewhere else to public health.
Yeah, we put it under the health area, but it actually went from 54 to 64.
Where did it come from?
It's for the behavioral. It's general fund dollars.
Just general?
Yes.
What department did it come from?
Well, it's a standalone, really. It's
standalone?
dollars we give to a mental health, the Nueces County Behavioral. It used to be MHMR. It's now Nueces County Behavioral and Intellectual Disabilities, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so will that be managed out of your office, or is she's going to be tracking that?
The health department's going to track it.
Yes.
It's the dollars are for the mental health and intellectual disabilities, and Councilman Garza talked about this.
Is it? I mean, I know he mentioned it, but I mean, in terms of contractual wise, because I didn't.
Yeah,
it looked like a new spending to me. It didn't look like it was different.
We have been funding this agency. It's a state agency focused on mental health. We actually need to. I'm going to work with the health director to better utilize them in our in our homelessness situation. San Antonio has a similar agency, and that's heavily utilized there. I think we're underutilizing or under partnering with this agency. So we're going to work with them more closely through the health department that's directly associated with health and mental health. And in particular, they're going to help us with the homelessness population. And so.
Okay, speaking of which, I know in recent months in news, not necessarily here, but in other places, we've had a resurgence of diseases that have been eliminated, for lack of a better terminology, in the United States. But since we had an influx of migrants, do you have any coordination with our INS or ICE in terms of when people immigrants come into the city, and do you have any coordination with that?
Yes, we actually do. And so for the immigrants, we do the TB screening for them. We also provide immunizations for them as well.
Is that included in your numbers here for immunization and TB screening?
Yes, it is.
So do you see that increasing? How many of those are part of that?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I can get that to you. But yes, we have seen increases in our numbers because of the immigrants.
Okay, so can you quantify that with a cost as well as what that is costing us as a community? And is there any way we can get reimbursed for that?
Well, most of that
through a federal program or anything like that?
And most of that, we use our Texas Vaccine for Children.
Well, I understand that, but is there any way we can get reimbursed for that from a federal program? If you can look into that?
Okay.
Yeah, we can look into that, Councilman.
Okay, because that's taking dollars out of our community for what's essentially a federal thing that's happening. Okay, for libraries, I have a question on your salaries. In terms of the differential, you said you had fewer hours at the Central Library?
Yes, sir.
Now, your salaries for the Central Library, $575,000 proposed for this year, but all your other libraries that have more hours are between $250,000 and $197,000. Is it just you have more staff?
Well, that's where our administrative department is at, and so we are at the higher level at that location. Right. We have several professional positions there that support the library system itself.
Okay, so that was one of the questions I asked that. I noticed that this was one of the few departments that didn't have an administrative component to it, that it was combined with the Central Library. I was wondering if we could possibly separate that out so we actually understand what the actual costs are for the Central Library, specifically aside from the professional staff that, and I guess I'm assuming your salary as well.
Yes, sir.
In that. Other departments have that, similar to Parks and Recreation. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to point out is that at Lauritama, that is where we support the rest of the system. So we do have more departments there that we, such as the Interlibrary Loan Department, the Local History Department, and that's also where we process everything for the rest of the system. So we have the Technical Services Department. So that is where we support the rest of the system.
And that's fine.
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying that it's wrong or anything like that. It just, it changes the dynamics of the cost coming out of that particular library, because you're taking in consideration other things that support other libraries and, administrative staff. So there could be some, we want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're looking at that particular library.
Yes, sir.
And I saw that you added that the salary went from $169,994 to $201 for the Hart Library, but the lowest cost on your libraries is the Garcia Library at $197,000, and you're not counting Central Library. You have the Nayland Public Library, Anita and W.T. Nayland Library, that's at $251,000. Why the disparity between
in most cases,
those?
at some of those locations like Garcia, that's where we have our newer entry staff, so they are being paid at a lower cost, because at other locations we have individuals that have been with us maybe 20 years or more, and the professionals also. So at this point they've already received step increases where they're being paid at a higher rate.
Is there a reason why you put your new staff at Garcia?
That would be where our vacancies are, so that it just depends. Like when we hire a new managing librarian, they're going to come in at entry level rather than a managing librarian that's been with us for 20 years. So
Okay.
They're at higher. So that's just where the openings were.
Okay, so
not necessarily placed there, right, Lawrence? That's where your vacancies have occurred
Yes, that's where the
historically.
vacancies where we advertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent, with exception of Owens over the, well, all right, well, that's enough for that question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You also have professional services, some interesting disparities on professional services between the libraries. And as soon as I get to it, give me a second. Just want to have some understanding on this. Is it outside of the Central Library, which has the highest at $41,000, you have the McDonald Library at $22,000, and you have the Hart one at $21,000, but you have the Nayland at $1,800. You have Owen Hopkins at $875, and you have Garcia Library at $1,600.
One of the differences is that at the locations that we have higher is that we have security guard service at those locations, plus other services that we provide. We do not have security guards at Neyland nor at Hopkins.
And why is the reason for that?
We asked for security services to be put into our budget several years ago, and that was one of the proposals that was not approved.
Do we need, I mean...
Yes, sir, we do need security guard service, and we are working to try to put that into our budget. We just have not been able to do so at this time.
Okay, that might be something to look at.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but we'll look at security services through each branch, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you know your budget. I really do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Parks and Recreation, really quick on the Latchkey program. It's, you know, if you take all the income that you have on the revenue side and the amount going out, you're about a negative $90,000. And there's some questions I had on some of the items. You have $400,000 in professional services associated with Latchkey. What specifically is that for? Because you have salaries of $1.9 million. So I'm wondering what the professional services are in Latchkey.
I don't have that with me, but I can get that to you.
Okay. You also have $162,000 in MIS allocation. I'm assuming that's Management Information Systems, of which it's a large portion. Parks and Recreation as a whole has $751,000 in that allocation. Is that something you're working with in terms of our IT, or what is it specifically you're using it for?
For management services or
management
information?
MIS allocation.
Yes, that would be for, Kathleen, you may have to help me out with this one, but...
Are you talking about our allocation in general?
Yeah, that's just the
Well, your
IT
allocation in
services.
general is $751,000. Is that all going to the IT department?
Yes.
It's all going to the IT department? Right. Okay. And Latchkey has $10,000, almost $11,000 in travel expenses. I'm wondering what kind of travel expenses that program would require.
Some of this may be coming to City Hall or...
Well, you have $13,000 in mileage, so I'm assuming that's the travel between locations, but what is the travel? Travel to me is when you go out of the city or you go to some conference or something. But this is for Latchkey specific. I'm not really sure what you would need that for.
Yeah, Jamel's staff, go ahead.
Yes. So the Latchkey staff has to be licensed and certified. So annually, they go to trainings where that's done, wherever those trainings are held throughout the country. They may be in New York, they may be in California, Florida, or whatsoever.
So specific training, how many people we send? Because that's not a whole lot in terms of you're sending more than a few people.
So generally, the managers go, and also the two top people go.
And that's every year?
Program managers. So you're looking at possibly 5 to 7 people going.
A certification, you were saying?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you have 2.4 million identified as grants, but, and this goes back to our finance department. We don't necessarily see what grants plan you have and how that's tracked, whether or not we receive them or not and I know I'd asked this before, but I want to make sure that we have visibility to grants, both received and planned going forward, especially in this budget, because you are planning to have 2.4 million. Want to see where we track on that.
We currently have 2.4 million in very specific grant programs.
Is that received already?
Yes, we run the Elderly Nutrition Program. It's a reimbursement program. So we receive money for Retired Senior Volunteer Program, where we receive the money, and Senior Companion Program, and our CYD program, Community and Youth Development.
And I'm assuming you're planning to go to get more grants this coming year.
Yes,
right?
they generally are reoccurring grants, those 4, but we do get other grants from other sources. Our Oso Bay Wetlands Preserve, they go out for grants all of the time. So we do have other sources for grants.
Okay, so some visibility as to tracking on those would be best. Going to the Community Enrichment Fund, which $1.925 million is being transferred to community enrichment to the parks. In the past, there had been certain amounts that had been identified to go to specific parks. I didn't see that in this particular budget. Is there a reason for that?
That money is technically not being transferred necessarily to parks. It's in the fund itself, and this is the first time that we've actually budgeted the funds in the process.
Right. Now, Kathleen, that we do have, Jamel, that we do have a list of parks that will be receiving shade structures, tree planting, and other amenities. Do you have that list, Jamel?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Sherrill Park, for example, Lindale, Moody, Aquarius, Bill Witt would be our first slate.
Okay, and I appreciate the focus being put on swimming pools. I know one of the places I took our city manager was to a specific swimming pool, especially even though it wasn't in my district, it was in Rollins, because we don't have a swimming pool in District 5. Let me say that again. We do not have a swimming pool in District 5. Okay, we do not have a public swimming pool in District 5.
It's a natatorium, which we cover.
Nope. Natatorium's in District 3.
Oh, okay.
And that is, that was pretty much maintained by CCISD, not so much by.
About $300,000 on it.
Yes.
I know. But like I said, it's not in District 5. Let me say it again. We do not have a swimming pool in District 5. Public swimming pool. Now, I wanted to mention something that Roland said about splash pads. I've actually heard the opposite in terms of splash pads and wanting us to do this, and specifically on splash pads that have pass-through systems. That's where water comes out, plays with, goes right into a drain, and it's not recirculating or chlorinated or anything like that. This is specifically that one, the one that's a pass-through system. It would be very bad optics, considering what we're going through with complaints on wastewater bills, for us to do a pass-through system. Okay, I want to be clear on this.
Mayor, we've already done that. As I mentioned earlier, we've done the analytics on that. We have decided that circulating is the way to go. At this point in time, even the repurposing didn't quite work out in the 3 sites that have been identified for splash pads. So those RFQs will be going out here in the immediate future.
Okay. Just for clarity, I cannot and will not support pass-through splash pads to where all that water is going down into the wastewater system.
Yeah, you won't have to take that position, council member. Thank you. We'll be bringing that forward as circulating.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Got a staff light up. Mr. Rizzone, is that you or is that? Huh? That's who? Well, it's got staff 1, and then after that is Smith.
Okay. In the interest of time, I would like to thank staff for all the obvious hard work that you've done on this. This is a budget that really touches everybody. Health, safety, and welfare. You've covered all these points. So there's some things that are brought up here, but we've got a lot of other stuff to cover. Again, thank you very much for a budget that I think is going to touch all of our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bujardo?
Thank you. I guess just for some clarity, and I appreciate your questions, Councilman, but I think it's very fair to say that before any item is brought forth, that you're going to explain the differences between inflow, outflow, that kind of thing. For me, it's an expectation that's going to happen and always has. So, Mr. Selman, thank you for clarifying that. And I think, staying on course in terms of what we're liking and maybe not liking or suggesting is where we need to stay. I will say that in terms of parks, Mr. Stevenson, maybe if we could look at, I don't know how many parks we have that actually have basketball courts on them, but I know that some of the ones that do may need a little bit, and this is very probably cosmetic, a little bit of help in I guess their look. Maybe the stripings of the basketball courts. I know the one in Flower Bluff at Parker Park needs a little bit of help, and I know there are others, but I think that, which brings me to the overall health issue, entices children and people to take their children to the parks. And I'm very, very happy to see what we're spending on parks, because this community and this city needs to focus, and we are, and thank you very much, on going to libraries, spending time outside, going to the parks, with or without your children. But it should be a place that is always available. And so I say basketball because I have a 14-year-old who's an outside little basketball, tennis as well, and baseball player. And so I think anything we can do in being creative in, for example, the basketball courts would be wonderful. One thing, and I know this isn't expensive, there's a whole other end of the spectrum, but I know these are probably expensive, but I do see the actual basketball posts that are, you can elevate the levels of the actual basketball hoop, so that they serve, I guess, like my son who wants to dunk, he brings it all the way down if he gets to play at one of those. But you can elevate those. Those are probably very expensive. But I still think the small little things we can do to improve those it encourages families to be outside, and I'm very much for that. So thank you. The other quick thing is, Mr. Zanoni, thank you for the ridding of the fees on our swimming pools. I think that was something that councils just never really realized is something that should be a given to our children and families. So thank you for coming in with that insight. And probably last, I want to recognize that Mike is here in the back with MHID, and I want to thank you for considering the monies that we raised and giving him from going from $54,000 to $64,000. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Zanoni, or whoever was. I mean, I know I did speak on that privately to you and Mr. Houlihan, but it is extremely important, as we all know, that not only the issues we're addressing here outside of our own home, City Hall, they're all intertwined with homelessness and the issue of mental health. So I wish that we could give more, but I know, Mike, that we've had conversations and you're very grateful for anything we can, give to you for you to be able to do your job even better, and I look forward to strengthening that partnership. So thank you all very much, and thank you so much for all of this information. This is wonderful. Y'all are all doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Did we determine who staff one is?
Is your light on, Mr. Klein? No, the secretary, I'm sorry. We'll have to look into it, Mayor. Mine's up over here.
Okay, well, just, it doesn't have to go into a lot of detail now, but you've got listed here in the parks, 2.8 on stormwater mowing. I mean, we got a lot of ditches and things in the city to mow, and could you kind of come back and and I don't know whether that's an organizational or a functional thing, but, you know, who does what? Because when we get complaints sometimes about this needs to be mowed or this needs to be mowed, we don't know who's responsible for it, whether it's the Parks and Recreation, whether it's the street department, whether it's ditches. I mean, stormwater mowing, is that really a park responsibility? I mean, I don't know. But can you kind of come back with an explanation?
Mayor, yes, I can, Mayor. That's one of the areas I've observed almost on week one, that we have 3 different departments mowing the same ditch, and we're going to redirect where the mowing belongs. It's not set up appropriately today.
All right, and the other is that I was encouraged on your presentation on page 39 that you talk about your park maintenance and you got a sprinkler head that's actually working.
Yes.
Is that kind of a goal to get all of them working in our parks where we got our irrigation system so we can have grass instead of dirt?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful.
It sure is.
That's wonderful. And then during the CVB American Bank, one of the things they were touting as their accomplishments was their ability to accelerate repairs and jobs, that maintenance, just general stuff down there at the convention center and the exhibit halls. And it was based on the fact that we tweaked the contracts, gave them a little more authority to get stuff done as opposed to having to come through the city bureaucracy to fix a toilet to flush or whatever we had to do. I don't remember what all the procedures were. As I understand it, part of the problem down in the Heritage Park area is kind of falls under the same thing, that they don't have much authority, or the tenants that are responsible for their normal maintenance, you know, doorknobs falling off or light switches out. They've got to come through the bureaucracy, and what could take you and me 45 minutes to run to Home Depot and get a switch may take 45 days because they got to go through the. Is there any tweaking that can be done to give them more authority to get the problem fixed so that it doesn't, instead of a doorknob, it's a whole door by the time they get to it?
There is tweaking that can be done. We're working on that already.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, talking about tweaking, we've been here since 9 o'clock and we haven't gotten to probably one of the major issues that we got. Are we wanting to stay here? And I jokingly said 6 o'clock when we started the meeting, but I'm not staying till 6 o'clock, I can tell you that. But, I mean, do we want to get into the water, wastewater, rate structure, budget wrap-up, or what do we want to do?
Mayor, one option is we could have another work session next Thursday.
I'm not interested in that.
Okay, then we can continue with water today. If we need to do any wrap-up Friday during our council meeting next Friday, that's.
Well, I think we need to yes, we're going to move on today. I mean, let's go. Because the public needs to understand that we're working on this and we're going to expedite this, and there's a sense of urgency that something needs to be done. And I'd rather just get it all out there, even though, anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Reba's going to present for us.
All right, go.
Good morning. Good morning. Reba George, Assistant Director, Support Services with Water Utilities. I'd like to walk through the recent history of our wastewater rate, how we got to where we are today, and how we'd like to move forward in the next fiscal year. Prior to January 2018, wastewater was charged using a winter quarter average. A reminder, a winter quarter average is calculated using the typical low water usage months of the year, and this is based on the assumption that all or most of the water entering a customer's home is also leaving the customer's home via the wastewater system. After a winter quarter average is determined, a monthly charge is calculated. That monthly charge then remains the same on the customer's bill for 12 months or until another winter quarter average is calculated. In April of 2017, during a City Council workshop on water and wastewater utility rates, staff were asked to provide alternatives to winter quarter average for wastewater. Some of the reasons mentioned were the high call volume from citizens complaining that they don't understand winter quarter averaging, or upset that they were stuck with the same rate for a year. During the next utility rate workshop in June 2017, 3 alternative methods for calculating wastewater were presented as listed here. The pros and cons were presented for each alternative along with sample bill calculations. After much discussion during the June workshop, City Council agreed to move forward with the method based on actual water usage on a tiered rate. And since February 2018, that method has been in effect. This slide shows a comparison of our current wastewater rate that's based on actual usage and winter quarter averaging for a customer A and a customer B. Both customers had a winter quarter average of 3,000 gallons prior to January 2018. We selected the month of September 2018 for this comparison, as that is typically a high usage for water month. Customer A used 3,000 gallons and customer B used 15,000 gallons. When applying our current wastewater rate structure to 3,000 gallons, customer A actually paid less than the winter quarter average. Customer B, at 15,000 gallons, paid more. Just a quick reminder how our wastewater charges would be calculated using a winter quarter average. There are two basic components, a minimum charge and a volume charge. The minimum charge is proposed to stay at $32.60. The volume charge is proposed to be $6.69 per 1,000 gallons above the first two. This example will use our median winter quarter average of 3,000 gallons. A minimum charge of $32.60 for the first 2,000 gallons, plus the volume rate for the next 1,000 gallons. That results in a wastewater charge of $39.29 and would be the same every month for 12 months, or until a winter quarter average could be calculated again. If changes to the wastewater rate and associated ordinances are approved and we move forward with winter quarter averaging, this is our proposed timeline for implementation. We will notify our customers immediately of the upcoming winter quarter averaging period of December 2019 and January and February of 2020. We are already working with our communications team to ensure that we utilize multiple methods to communicate with our customers, including a customer utility bill insert. Once the winter average months have been billed, an average for each residential customer will be established and a wastewater rate calculated. The billing will be tested and customers will start seeing a new monthly charge for wastewater no later than June 2020 and would be the same for the next 12 months. The proposed ordinances that we'll bring to you will authorize the city manager to implement an earlier effective date for winter quarter averaging as soon as the city billing system is programmed to calculate the wastewater bills utilizing winter quarter average usage.
Now, go over that again.
The proposed ordinance that we'll bring to you on September 6th will authorize the city manager to implement an earlier effective date for winter quarter averaging as soon as the city billing system is programmed to calculate that. In other words, we're intending to do it as quickly as possible, but no later than June.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think that needs to be real clear with the public that we're going to, once the calculation is made in February, and I don't understand I'm not an IT person or computer person, but, and I think we've got, well, there's 30 days in the month average. I mean, so we've got 30 billing periods or 41 billing periods, 28 billing periods. How many billing? What's the billing cycle?
There's 21 billing cycles, Mayor. You have
All right.
21 different cycles.
So conceivably, I mean, you'll have from now until February to put in all kinds of scenarios of who's using what for 3 months. I mean, I'll give you my bill. You can plug that in. And for 3 different, for December, January, February, and run it and make sure you've got whatever programming is needed to do that. So conceivably, at the end of February, I mean, would it just simply be a punch of the button to add up December, January, and February divided by 3 and you got your average? And then you've got the formulas. And so in other words, what I'm saying is that you got all the information by February, so the beginning of March, you really, the first or the second billing cycle, could already be up and running on the new rates, right?
That's the math. But I'm not an expert at the IT part either, so I'd have to defer.
Mayor, that's the goal. So we're testing the system now. So once we have the data, it's just a matter of plugging it in. You mentioned the 21 billing cycles. We're not going to wait till all 21 are ready to go. So billing cycle 1 could start as early as that second cycle in March or April. So the new system will begin to be sent out to the customers one cycle at a time. June is the worst case scenario, and every customer's bill would be sent out at that point. But we're going to be beginning in March, April. Yeah.
So, I mean, and I don't know how that's all set up. I'm not a computer person, but so we know if you flip switch number 1, whoever's in cycle number 1 is going to be the same basis every cycle number 1, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So really, whatever numbers you come up with, you could start running tests to make sure the computer's feeding your calculations right. I mean, you could start feeding those back next month as a test to go and get to see if your system's working, so that when those numbers are plugged in at the end of February, that could be done. So I mean, this has got to be expedited as quickly as possible, but it's got to be accurate. We don't want to have another billing fiasco, but I think we've got plenty of time to test it. Everybody agree on that?
Yes, sir. The IT staff we're very conservative. We realize this is a top priority, and we will implement it as quickly as we can, as long as the system is tested first.
And this is applying to the wastewater only?
Correct. It's only the wastewater.
For residential customers.
Okay. All right. Mr. Smith, you had a comment? Yeah. Excuse me, were you through it with your?
I was going to pass the baton over to Mark for the next section, but if you have any other questions
wait
about
a minute.
this.
We may hand you a hammer to give him, so just a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, in our last brief, it was mentioned that we may use 4 months and drop the highest month. And I know that was an issue when we switched over. We had a lot of people came in and said, oh, we had this 1 month and this is unfair. So have we dropped that scenario that was the recommendation of the committee?
That really complicates the programming part, and right now we're going forward with the recommendation to use the 3 months, December, January, and February.
Okay, so we're not going to take care of the problem we had in the past.
We won't be able to address that this year.
Thank you.
Okay, but there's help on the way. Okay, now you can pass the baton. We'll put back the hammer.
Mark Van Vleck, Assistant City Manager. Now we're going to discuss a little bit about the history of a stormwater utility fee. Prior to 1989, stormwater operations were funded out of the general fund. Since 1989, they have been funded out of the water fund. In 2008, we established a stormwater fund, and why that is important is prior to that, it was very hard to actually understand what were your costs to operate a stormwater operations, maintenance, and debt. It was all really still buried completely within the water fund. When it was established as a new fund, we now actually know what all the costs are, what the debts are, and it's all actually tracked so that you can justify and explain what the costs are. So that actually was a very important step. And since then, and this year we're proposing it would be about $32 million. They're just transferred over to the Stormwater Fund from the Water Fund. An equal amount every month is essentially how it occurs. So 12 iterations of an equal amount of the $32 million is transferred over to the Stormwater Fund from the Water Fund. There have been 3 attempts in the past by the council, previous councils, to establish a stormwater utility fee. The first time was in 1993, the next time was in 1999, and then in 2009, which is actually coincides with when they set up that fund in 2008. The law allowing municipalities to create a stormwater utility fee was established in 1987, and it's Local Government Code Chapter 552. The key elements to it is it has to be based directly on drainage. It has to be reasonable, equitable, and non-discriminatory. It has a lot more than that, but I'm not going to read the entire law to you today. But there is a law that has to be followed on the establishment and the application of a stormwater utility fee. Our recommendation would be to integrate it into the budget timeline, not necessarily as part of the budget process, because we can start some of the elements to this sooner than that, but essentially then apply whatever those fees are that are agreed to in January of 2021. Much of the time is spent in the approach using lot size or preponderance of communities use impervious surface. That is a very detailed, essentially you've got to go to each lot and determine how much impervious surface, or in other words, other than grass or landscaping exists on that lot, and then adjust as necessary. And that's a very tedious task because you do it lot by lot. What we're recommending is the first step would be just basically a lot size with a coefficient related to runoff for that type of use, and then essentially go from there and go with equivalent residential units. And then the longest time really is taking and determining that for every single lot within the city, applying it, and then checking it through both GIS, which at the Nueces County Appraisal District, and making sure the uses match up. Much of the time that it takes is, even after you've decided to go that way, is the actual application and testing, and giving people an opportunity to appeal those decisions. One of the other recommendations, there's actually a book that of best practices and the goods and the bads, and how people have been able to succeed and what they recommend to make this successful. And one of the key ones that they recommend is establishing a stakeholders group at the very beginning. What we will be recommending is that each council member essentially appoint one member as kind of a liaison, and then identify the critical stakeholders that the staff would appoint, and that could somewhere be in the round of 21 or more, to represent residential, different types of residential, commercial, multiple different types of commercial, like multifamily. One of the critical ones is like auto dealerships that you need to make sure they're involved. The other really big one that is usually affected very differently is like your storage. The mini storage areas, they usually use no water, but they have a lot of runoff because mostly they're concrete. And various industry as well as developers. The other recommendation is that you have a credit system, like Lowe's. I don't know if you realize it, but they've actually built a detention pond next to their property. As you're going out, you'll see that right next door, right on their property, is a detention pond. Well, it says that a Lowe's without a detention pond should pay more than a Lowe's with a detention pond. You should give them credit for the fact that they built that and are maintaining it. And that's another one of the lessons along that process. And that's why we feel it should extend over essentially the next budget cycle and then go into effect in 2021. And I stand by for any questions.
Got one observation. Go back over your definition that it has to be equitable, fair, consistent, based on cost, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you also said we couldn't implement this until 2021, which is still a year off. We can't do anything this year is what you're saying right now.
Right, for this fiscal year.
Well, let me suggest this, and I'm a pretty simple guy. We need something, and we need it now. The most fair, the most equitable, and the most non-discriminatory would be, in my opinion, and we've established that the current water rate, let's just say it's $1. Let's say $100. So, well, your utility bill with the water rate is the water and the stormwater.
Sure.
So your water bill is $100. We've established that. Everybody agrees with that. And that includes the two components, water and stormwater. And we've also been told that 39% of that is stormwater, right?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yes, sir.
So my first suggestion is that we take that $100 for our water that we're paying, send me a bill for $61 for my water, and $39 for my stormwater on separate line items. Now, you take the amount of money that 39% generates, $31 million is what you're saying you need, right?
31, 32,
whatever you said your stormwater is, 30, what did you say it was, 31, whatever number it is, whatever your target dollar is that's going to cost you to operate your stormwater. You've got 99,000 customers, right?
Yes, sir.
Divide that 38,000 or million, whatever it is, 31 million. Do you divide it by your 99,000 customers? Divide that by 12. And that might come out to $15 a month or $10 a month. Every customer in the city enjoys the benefit of having stormwater, so you don't have to drive around with your streets flooded when it does rain once every 6 months. But it's a consistent charge. It's equal to everybody that's participating in it. And everybody pays the same amount of money. We all use the streets. They all drain in front of our houses. Nobody can squibble about it. Nobody's getting charged more than anybody else. Everybody's enjoying the stormwater deal. And you have just dropped their water rate by 39%. And you've brought down the rate of the stormwater considerably because everybody's paying the equal share to derive the benefits of having their city drained as quickly as you can, because the street system is the drainage system in our city. It's got to go to the street to get to the drains, unless there's a bar ditch or something. And that, to me, is pretty simple. Going around and asking how many square feet I've got at my house and how many square feet you've got at your house, or how much square foot. And those retention ponds, by the way, that Lowe's bills and the other people, it's not a retention pond, it's just a slowdown pond. It doesn't sit there and have water and fish and ducks and all that sort of stuff in it. It just collects it in a big pot, and then it just slows down the flow into the stormwater soon. It's not retaining anything, it's just slowing it down. So at least the retention pond I've seen, it's got water in it while it's raining, and 3 hours later it's empty because it's just slowing it down going to the drain. It's not retaining.
Right.
Lake Corpus Christi is a retention pond.
Right. Now, I think I
Choke
said it was a
Canyon is a retention
detention, not a retention. Detain is, in other words, just slow down.
Oh, detention. I'm thinking about juvenile.
Yeah, no,
I
think I said detain. I get my words wrong, but I think I said detain, which just means slow down, not hold forever.
Retention. I'm thinking, wait a minute.
No.
Choke Canyon and Lake Corpus Christi are retention ponds, but not detention. Well, anyway, it's a slow down process and not a collection and holding process. So to me, it's a pretty simple deal, and I'm a pretty simple guy. You take the dollar figure you need by the number of customers you have on an annual basis, you divide it by 12, and that's what your stormwater charge is, and we're done. Ms. Wardo.
Thank you. So I guess for clarity, going back, which I'm glad we're doing, to the winter quarter averaging, would obviously make changes to the billing for people. And of course, our concern, our deep concern, is the stabilization of people's bills. But so if you are recommending we break this out in 2021 and implement, that's another unstabilization period we're going to have. And I say this because I know for whatever reason, and Mr. Zanoni, Mayor, every email I receive copies them so that they know everything coming through. And 99.9% of them are on the south side. We could go all day as to why that is. Councilman Roy doesn't have one of the ones I receive. Well, I mean, that's okay. You may have 5, but I know it seems that no one else is experiencing that. Let's just put that aside for now. So there's this issue, and I get it. I know it is the methodology of which and the formula of which we are using because we made the switch. But my concern is the stabilization of this altogether. And I can't say this for fact, but I think I remember, and I was opposed to it, so it, for me, it doesn't matter, but it was said to the council at the time that changing was not going to affect the effect we're experiencing now. So moving forward, going from winter to actual, moving forward, my concern again, in 2021, what will separating out that stormwater do to the billing overall? Because it is, I mean, it is unimaginable if it doesn't go. I don't even know if that's something that you can actually answer based on, you know, how this all works. Moving, it's never been done, so.
Well, there will be a large difference to some customers. Some will be, if the mayor's goes down and the total revenue stays the same, what happened to someone else?
Right.
It had to go up, right? Okay. And so you're 39% on a minimum of, that's 39% of 1260. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor's is 39% of $100. Okay. So one is $5 or $6. The other one is $39. If you now say everybody's going to pay the same, this one's got to come up to around 24, 25, and this one comes down from 39, right? So these people who are at 1260 today and now are up to 30 something, you're likely to hear from them.
Your 39 is on the 612. You take your rate and you take 39% of it, and then collectively, right. Your 39% applies to your total collection.
Correct.
And so you reduce your total collection. So that triggers down through the different rates.
Right.
So there is going to be another shift
yes.
somewhere. And I guess that's my point, is that's fine. You know, when I had my insurance agency and I knew there was a rate increase coming, what I did was I had every one of my employees, there were only 5, but still, I had all 5 of them, as much as we could do it in between phone calls and daily work, calling the customer saying, this is coming down the chain. What I'm seeing happening now, and I'm so irritated by it, is, and this isn't you, this is just in general, you know, if this change, which is what we're experiencing for whatever reason on the south side is happening, then we need to be in front of it. We need to let people know, and I know we are as people are calling in, but there are many people who who are not able to call. They're busy, they have families and kids. And then, you know, they're a prisoner of the bill. You got to pay it, it's your water bill. And so my concern is the communication moving forward long term. If we don't have a strong proactive plan, if this is implemented, and I understand it's a recommendation at this point, then, I mean, you know, it's really, you're disrupting. We're disrupting people's lives and livelihood by making these changes, even though in the long run, I realize it's for the best, but I think it's how we handle it and communicate. So how would we communicate to the public what we're going to, how this is going to affect kind of what you just said, but obviously it'd have to be in a way that, you know, everybody can understand that it may or may not affect them.
That's why we were proposing over an extended time period, is so that we get public involvement, we get back and forth communication, so that they see what we're doing as we move along with the process.
But that's the task force. I'm talking about the people
but they're also to help us identify the best ways to get the information to all their constituents. You're going to have various constituencies that need to be communicated with, and the stakeholders are to help us figure out the best way to get to those various constituencies.
Thank you. Okay, and the last thing, Mr. Zanoni, I would like to also consider and suggest that we consider a conservation campaign. And you're very familiar with the San Antonio saws. Theirs is extremely, I read up and researched it, right. Extremely successful. And they were not in that boat at one point. And that campaign has saved their ratepayers so much money just in putting that forth, the efforts forth.
Right.
I would
Yes,
love
we
to
need
see us do something.
The water department has told me that the actual usage over time has gone down by our customers. So we
Right.
do have some conservation measures, but we can always do better and more. So we'll be looking at that.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, I just want to, I don't want to come off as this, I'm contradicting you. I understand the importance of it. It's a priority and we need to get it done right away. I guess, and I didn't quite understand what you were talking. Now, I did a little bit better now that we're talking about calculating the average and divided by the number of customers. It's just, I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of how is this going to, how is this going to hit me later? I have this saying, how's this going to bite me in the blank later in my office? And I guess the thing is, as an example, I hear all the time, they're always working on the south side streets. They always fix them over there. They're always fixing the ones on, I'm just telling you that I hear this, and it's been the myth for a long time, because I got to fight it. They're always fixing the ones on Ocean Drive. Now, sometimes I say, drive down Congressional, drive down Wooldridge, but if I think we need the community input simply because we need to be able to have that process where the community understands what it is that we can, so that we can explain it. I mean, and that's really, I think this is important enough, and I understand your anxiety. I mean, we're all feeling it. I just think we need to be so that way we don't have to deal with those myths. So that's all I wanted to add.
Mr. Hernandez. Excuse me, Rezoop?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
Sorry. Thank you. And just to clarify, and I think Ms. Councilwoman Guajardo was trying to say this, is that, and I mentioned this at our conversation specifically on wastewater and why it's important that we go to wastewater winter quarter averaging. Most people see their expenses on a monthly basis. And so if you have consistency, and I think I gave the example, some people actually get an electrical service. It gives them a constant monthly charge, so they have consistency in their billing. By having this go based on what we're doing now, you have these spikes. You may not be paying more for the whole year, but when people are looking at it from a monthly perspective, their monthly income and monthly expenses, it makes a big difference. So I think by doing this, I think we still maintain the same money coming in. But on the flip side of that, and I don't want to get into the specific details of it, of a certain concern we have with a federal agency, that what that would do to the wastewater and how that would be reflected in the bill going forward. So we want to make sure that that we have some aspect of that. Would that be considered something in addition to the winter quarter averaging, or would it be just incorporated into it?
Be incorporated into it.
Is there a way we can separate it out in the sense that we can identify it as a reason why? Because I think if you put something in a bill, and I always look at this from perspective of being in the Navy, we always used to say keeping it sailor proof, right? Plain English, easy to understand information, not a whole lot of acronyms, but just keeping it pretty simple on the bill. If we can explain it a little bit as to why the cost is there. Ultimately, I think what I'd like to do is actually have some time with your department to understand the reasoning behind the rates, not only just for wastewater, but also for water and gas, to actually break that down. Obviously, I'm not an expert in this, so I want to make sure that I have a clear understanding. So when I communicate with individuals in the community, that there's good information is passed along. But like I said, try to make it as simple as possible. And I like the improvements we did to the bills that we have done, and it shows the averages, but then it also creates more questions. You see the averages of consumption, and then you have somebody going along at 8,000, and all of a sudden they have a 30,000 gallon bill, and this is a lot of the questions I get. And we had that discussion on the meters, but there's still a lot to lot of information. The more information you provide, the more questions you get. And so if we have a good, clear understanding of that, and that might be for all our council members.
To kind of answer the spike is I had not turned my sprinkler system on in 3 years, and in July I finally decided that my grass had gotten just about dead, and I turned it on for once a week, and just that once a week increased my usage by 10,000 gallons a month. Okay, and so just to understand how you could get to 30,000 instead of once a week, what did I say? I do it 3 times a week. Okay, and so, and it happens at my house between about 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm getting up, but my wife sure isn't, and she doesn't know that it went off. And sometimes if I sleep in, I don't know that it went off. So it's easy for sprinkler systems to cause this, and you may not even know that it even came on, because by the time you get up, unless you did water the road, which we hope you didn't, you may not even be able to tell that it was actually on. So I mean, that it's, for my example, is I know you can do an extra 10,000 gallons just by turning on the sprinkler system by 1 day a week. So to help explain that.
Well, all I can say is if you didn't turn your sprinkler on for 3 years, I'm glad you're not my neighbor.
I'm Miles' neighbor. And he still hasn't turned his on yet.
I will definitely, I'll definitely reach out to get that explanation on the actual waste, on the water rates, especially since we're increasing the water rate. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Roy?
Thank you. I'm wearing my Aggie shirt today, so I'm a little confused on a couple things. If it's an apartment complex.
Yes, sir.
So that's what I want to understand, because we talked a little bit about individual. I understand the mayor's way that he was coming up with, looking at an equitable way to figure it out. But if you have an apartment complex, under this new proposed winter averaging, how would that change from what they're doing right now as far as management? Let's say you got 700 units.
Right.
How does that change? Is this, I know you said that part of having the committee, you want to have commercial people involved, car dealerships, storage, and all of those things. But then also you mentioned earlier that this would only affect residential. Or did I miss that?
No, it would affect everyone.
It would
Yes,
affect
sir.
everyone.
Yes, sir. Stormwater would affect everyone.
The stormwater would.
The change in winter quarter averaging is only residential. Commercial
Okay.
has always been whatever you use is whatever you pay.
And that's not going to change.
That's not going to change. So winter quarter averaging just applies to residential.
So when you look at anything that, by definition, when you look at a large apartment complex, then that really falls under commercial.
Yes, sir.
I got you. Okay. I just had to follow the loop on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did you not want?
I mean, I was just going to say real quick, I'd like us to get to winter averaging, get some of those bills out for a period of time, get things to settle down so that people actually expect what to pay. If we're working toward a solution of being able to separate stormwater and water rates, I think we need to do it somewhere in the future where we build a little confidence with our residential customers and the way we're billing for services. It's great in terms of transparency and everything else, and they can see, but the majority of the folks look at the bottom line and say, hey, how much I have to pay this month? And if you put 10 different lines in there, I don't think, it's going to do a lot for the majority of the folks. They want some stability. They want some predictability from our utility systems. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, is yours back on, or do you turn it?
Sorry.
So you probably are confused on where you're going after this, which is okay. I'm confused too. I mean, if you're going to go in to do a study on how you come up with this, committee and all of this sort of stuff, which is going to take some time. So they're not going to get any relief based on your projections until 21.
Sure.
Which is really not acceptable to me, but be that as it may. For the transition period, I really believe it's important because people need to understand when they get their bill, and on a, you know, mine, I think I said last month was $500 and something, 35,000 gallons. You know, that $500, the water portion wasn't but about 200 and something.
Probably.
I don't remember what it was. I didn't bring the breakdown, but it was 200. But so the transition period, though, because the next rate that you're going to make some adjustments on, besides the line item that has wastewater, and that's the one we're going to implement as quickly after February the 28th as possible. What I think, and I would highly recommend, and this is just a matter of Peter reprogramming the computer to print it out, is to go ahead and make that break between your water bill, your 61%, and your 39% stormwater. The total is going to be the same with no change in the rates. But at least the consumer is seeing that this is my water bill and this is my stormwater bill. So when they complaining about their water bill, they've got a 39% reduction from what they're getting today in their mind. And that's really truth in advertising, so to speak, because when you're sending me a bill for water and it's $200, or based just 100, so everybody understands the percentages, you're really sending me a bill for water for 61. And you're sending me a bill for 39 so that the streets will drain when we get a rain. And if you bill me that on a monthly basis, I understand that, because that system's got to be, if it cost us that to produce the ability to keep our streets transportation accessible, as opposed to getting out and parking them on a high spot and rolling up your pants and walking home, you've got to have there's a cost associated with having that convenience available. And that's what it's going to cost you. X number, 31%, or whatever it costs to operate it based on however you come up with your formula. But I think you really ought to break it out just in truth and advertising, or whatever they call it. I mean, if it's in today, without any rate change, it would go from, $100 to $61 and $39, and you'd still have a $100 bill, which is fine. It's not going to affect me one way or the other than I can look at my bill, because when people call us and send us emails, there are some that probably will look at their water portion. 99% are looking at their total utility bill, and they're calling it a water bill. So at least when they call, you can say, wait, let's go back over your bill. Here's your water bill. And you use that water. We've checked, and I think we've got a pretty high level of confidence that the calculations are right today. We've closed that hole in terms of bad calculation information. We've got that resolved, I think. So I think the next step is to get transparent with the figures. I'll wait to get your recommendation, and I don't know that we need to make it. You guys are the ones that we've got to depend on, but I can tell you, until we can get the public's understanding at a higher level than it is right now, I'm not sure, until we get some rains and it quits, they're going to realize, I mean, there may be isolated cases where you've got billing issues, but I think overall, it's a total confusion in the way the billing is structured and the way it's allocated. Anything else? That's all your presentation at this point?
Yes, sir. Bill.
Yeah, that's our presentation at this point, Mayor.
All right, so this completes our budget process.
Yeah, there was one other thing, but we can, if you want to cover it now, we can cover it this Friday. Just kind of a wrap up of some potential amendments to the budget. It's not.
Well, let's have them Friday.
Yeah.
If you could, that's before. Can you send?
Yeah.
I mean, do you need to make those public, or would it be good to give us some advance notice of what those are, so we could have between now and next Friday, if we've got some questions for clarification, we don't spend 3 hours trying to solve a $50 problem.
Exactly. We can do the letter, and we'll include it in your agenda packet that'll go out tomorrow. It'll be considered next Friday. We'll put it as an item on the agenda for next Friday.
All right. Well, I think that'd be great. Quick.
Mr. Zanoni, I'm assuming Mr. Collins obviously would be working on this, the water rate issue we're talking about.
Yes.
Would he be able to create or validate, I guess you could say, a timeline and maybe an analysis of who would be affected and such of this? Would that be okay?
Yeah, while he's not here, he's been texting me, so everything we've been saying is consistent with what he...
We've lost a quorum, so...
Okay.
We lost our what?
Quorum.
Okay.
Well, we're not taking any action.
We're
not taking any action. You can answer a question.
Yeah, I'm going to finish the answer. So Peter Collins is already working on this. Everything we've talked about, he's consistent with via text, and so we know that he's testing the system now.
Okay.
We're not going to wait till the winter quarter average is done to see if the system works. We're testing it now with data, as the mayor was suggesting, so that when the winter quarter averaging is ready, we plug it into the system and run a set of bills, and they should be good to go at that point. So we're doing trial runs and testing of the system right now.
Okay.
We're not going to wait.
Okay, good.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, whether we have a quorum or not, I want to thank you and the staff for putting this together. This was, I think, a very informative and a lot smoother process that we've experienced in the past, and it's very informative. And I think the public appreciates the public meetings that we had. And so it's just worked out very well, and appreciate their efforts, and we will hopefully come to some resolution pretty quick. But thank you for all your work. It's been a lot of hard work. You've taken a lot of guff from us, but we're trying to respond to the public and come up with something that's clear and understandable and fair, and I think we've done that. So at this point, we will adjourn.